Zoom is up and running, and I see that little icon that is showing me basically that we are working. Kim, it's good to see you. Good evening.
Karsten, hello.
So, how are you doing?
Fine. Because
Awesome.
it's end of the day. That's the last session for today, and then
Yes.
couching, relaxing, sleeping.
Oceans 11 then for you?
It's over. So maybe today something like idiocracy.
Sounds great. But before we can do that, well, let's talk a little bit about OpenStack up and running in 35 minutes. We basically chose this title on purpose because it reflects something you were basically telling me, and we will touch on that in a few seconds. But first of all, let's talk a little bit about what we are currently presented with, and that is basically the idea of everything as a service, which basically implies that us as a software company, or as somebody who is basically running infrastructure, we are forced by our clients, by our customers, to provide everything as a service. There's a huge movement in that direction, in that regard. So basically, customers want to have everything basically laid out to them, and they want basically everything provided as some sort of a self-running service, where you would basically have, for example, something like self-service functionalities, right? And that is basically the point where, for example, OpenStack comes into the game. Can you elaborate a little bit onto, first of all, no, you don't elaborate anything because I haven't properly introduced you so far. Kim, pardon me, please. And there is an echo on my voice. I was told, so let me check that again. Yeah, we can change that. So, is there still an echo on my voice? That would be awesome to know. I do hope not. So again, it's better. That's what it was. What was said? Perhaps because I was silent. Kim. Perhaps first of all, introduce yourself, because that gives. I know your introductions. That gives us a straight direction towards why OpenStack, and why OpenStack perfectly fits into that everything as a service mantra.
Of course. Welcome. Good evening, everybody. My name is Sahm. I'm the CTO of Cloudical. I'm an OpenStack enthusiast, part of OpenStack community since 2014. Must be Grizzly Icehouse release round about this.
That
The last.
is
Sorry?
truly old.
Yeah, that's truly old. So I'm working the last years in the OpenStack community, setting up, design OpenStack clouds, public, private clouds. And yes, I'm an infrastructure guy, I'm an OpenStack guy, and we as Cloudical have a lot of OpenStack knowledge. And this is also why OpenStack is part of VanillaStack.
But we did not include it because it is because we just have the knowledge. We did include it because OpenStack solves some purpose there. And if we speak of everything as a service, and specifically in regards to self-service, in regards to provisioning things the easy way, is there any alternative to OpenStack, frankly, at least in the open source environment, from your perspective?
No. So if you look on real infrastructure as a service solutions, yeah, maybe you're able to build something if you use KVM, maybe OVIRT or something like this. There is an API available, and then maybe you're able to build some orchestration around Ceph or an SDN layer. But why you should do this? Because we have OpenStack.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it sounds like a lot of work to do that, right? So if we think into OpenStack as an infrastructure as a services layer, which is quite often what people and customers demand, can you elaborate a little bit into what is basically the problem that we are going to solve with VanillaStack there? Why did we include OpenStack there? Again, not just because you know OpenStack great and the other guys know OpenStack very well, but it is basically we need to solve a problem, right?
Yeah, of course. So OpenStack is the solution for infrastructure as a service in the open source community. But do you try to install and operate OpenStack?
Frankly, I actually failed on the Kubernetes level of things. To be honest, so forgive me on doing that. I learned it the hard way, and it took me like 4 months to get my first Kubernetes cluster up and running. And then if I think of setting up something like OpenStack, I would miserably fail, I guess.
And this is the main problem. All the people, the community, the administrators, the end users, I don't care, they all love running workload on top of OpenStack. They love to use OpenStack because it's great. There's standardized API usage. There's a lot of automation available to deploy workloads on top of OpenStack. But OpenStack is really hard to set up and run it in the daily business. This is the main problem of OpenStack. Is why mostly really big enterprise companies are running OpenStack, because they have a lot of people for the daily business. They have a lot of these skilled people. You need to skill and enable your administrators to understand these complex setups of OpenStack. Because if you're saying you need 3 months to set up a Kubernetes cluster to understand these architecture and these tools, if you have a look on Kubernetes and on OpenStack, Kubernetes is really easy to understand how it works. If we
compared to OpenStack, you mean?
Really big ecosystem of OpenStack.
Okay. Well, that basically sounds like I do not want to try that at home. Is that right?
This is really true. You can do this, but maybe you would like to have other things to do in the next years.
Kim, but what did we do to basically circumvent that? I mean, we cannot take away the complexity of OpenStack per se, or can we?
Yes and no. What we are doing is, so for VanillaStack, we are running Kubernetes and we are saying this is our operating system. We don't care about the underlying operating system and layers.
We're going to touch on that in a few minutes then, because obviously there are some constraints, but so basically we don't care is the wrong word, but we are Linux agnostic there.
Yeah, so there's our baseline. There's the baseline is Kubernetes, and we are saying, okay, OpenStack is just one workload for Kubernetes because it's a perfect fit. OpenStack is mostly REST APIs, MySQL, MariaDB, RabbitMQ, and all these stuff is working fine in Docker containers or in containers. If we all know, for running containers in an enterprise level or in scale out, we need an orchestrator. This is Kubernetes.
Yeah.
And so we see, okay, there's a big benefit to run OpenStack on Kubernetes.
But Kim, again, is that simple to set up? Is that easy? Is it straightforward?
Yes and no.
I'm afraid I won't get a clear answer from you today.
The OpenStack community has a solution for this. There is a project to running OpenStack on top of Kubernetes. This is OpenStack Helm. We are using the Helm charts, or we have created charts for OpenStack for running it on top of Kubernetes by using the Helm packaging mechanism. And if we look on these independent charts, there is a bunch of options to customize your OpenStack installation.
Okay, so then I would not fail basically on running it in regards to deploying Helm charts, but I would perhaps miserably fail in customizing it properly.
Sure.
Awesome.
And this is where we, from a VanillaStack perspective, say, okay, we are using these open source mechanisms. They are available. So Kubernetes has already developed these OpenStack Helm charts. We have a look on these charts and we set up pre-configuration that all these OpenStack charts, what you need, are implemented, are connected, and we are creating a solution. So they are pre-confined. Yes, you're able to modify this configuration if you have strange customized setups.
Yeah,
but for these, for the normal user, you can run our pre-configured OpenStack environment on top of your Kubernetes.
Okay.
And it fits 90%.
Okay. Awesome. Then let me, please do me a favor. I have the VanillaStack 2010, which is not released officially so far, installer here. And I'd like you to, I'd ask you to run me through it. I need to improvise that for a second. Give me that few seconds. Perhaps while I'm doing that, you might touch on what is basically the baseline of infrastructure required to run our VanillaStack, and specifically to run OpenStack on top of VanillaStack in a proper way. Perhaps you can touch on that as long as I'm creating the proper screen here.
Yeah, sure, because we have no Jeopardy theme at the moment. So what do you need? So from a VanillaStack perspective, first we need master nodes, because we need to run this control plane for Kubernetes. This is essential, but there is not so much workload running on top. So you need, for a production grade setup, 3 master nodes. They have some CPU and some memory, like 4 or 8 gigabyte, a little bit depending on how large is your Kubernetes cluster at the end, but that's all. And then you need the worker nodes. They are running your storage, self-storage workload and your OpenStack workload. And this is a little bit depending on how many virtual machines you would like to run in your OpenStack farm, in your OpenStack cluster, and how many storage do you need. So you can start with a minimum of 3 worker nodes and then scale if you need to scale your capacities.
Okay, awesome. That sounds great. That sounds good. You see, I'm still working on making everything visible on screen. It's not that easy, but we will manage that in a few seconds. And once we have done that,
Windows.
Now it looks properly, right? Okay, so Kim, please guide me through here. What do we see now?
Okay, so you have started the web UI of the installer. Just starting the Docker container, create a port mapping, port 8080 to 8080. This is how it's described in the VanillaStack documentation, in the how-to or in the quick start guide. And we see on localhost our VanillaStack web UI. So this is just the welcome screen. We see it's 2010 release.
Okay.
And we see a lot of requirements. They are not so big. And the important thing is called coffee or tea, but I have nothing.
Kim, pardon me. I just read that the display might not be that sharp. Is it better now? I've increased the size a little bit.
It's okay, but high definition is another. So
wait, let me check if I can do something on the zoom level of things. Give me a second.
Maybe I know what is written there. Looking to the attendees, is it readable? Yes or no?
Then let's do it differently. Let's do it differently. I make the both of us visible in a joint view, and I'm using screen sharing on Zoom. So unfortunately for those who might not be looking into the Zoom screen sharing, now it is perhaps not ideal. Let me check that. What are we sharing? We should be sharing the VM screen, so that is then good. So Kim, yeah, now it's not visible for you, which is awesome.
I'm also not
modern
able to
technology.
see
Modern technology. We get that one up and running. Give me a second. So now you see it again. Okay. So.
Okay. So what I said, the requirements, we need a small cup of coffee or tea, but I have
it. It's important.
Was too late. Okay, so we ignore this and press the next button. We see some terms and condition. We are seeing, okay, cool, this project is under the Apache license version 2. Check. And then we see the general settings. And there we see you can select the main components of VanillaStack. So yeah, main component is Kubernetes. You're not able to unselect it.
Absolutely.
And we see at first there is the initial workload Rook.
Can you elaborate a little bit on Rook? What is it? Just with a short sentence.
So Rook is a framework to run storage on top of Kubernetes, and we are using Rook to run Ceph on top of Kubernetes.
Okay, our connection was a little bit disturbed at the moment, but we are using Rook to run Ceph on top of Kubernetes. Okay, Ceph actually has quite a strong relationship with OpenStack, right? And now we are basically at the point where we then would select OpenStack as a workload to be deployed, right? Because that is basically what you have to do in order to ensure that you get OpenStack installed, right? In a very beginning, Kim, there's just one thing, an HA installation. Is that required for OpenStack, or is it required for something else?
It's required for each production grade setup.
Okay, but basically you can roll out OpenStack with a non-HA installation. Okay,
Sure.
good. And then we would head down to the worker nodes, right? Why is there 3 written? Has that any kind of don't know? Is there any kind of sense in that?
Yeah, of course. It's because we are running Ceph as a storage backend, and Ceph has a quorum or needs a quorum, and for a quorum we need a minimum of 3 worker to get it.
Okay.
So this is important for the HA, for the storage replication. So yeah, we need a minimum size or a minimum count of 3 workers. We can scale it up to.
And your OpenStack installation would scale with it. Awesome.
Yeah.
So then.
So we need an SSH key because the installer is using Ansible behind the scenes, and for Ansible we need an SSH connection. So the installer generates an SSH key, and you need to copy paste these SSH public key to your Linux nodes to the authorized key file. How you can done this is written down on the page or in the VanillaStack documentation. And if we have done this, we say, okay, I've copied this, next, and now VanillaStack is asking, please tell me what are the IP addresses of your nodes and what is the username to log in there.
Right. Since we are doing a dry run at the moment, we can basically add whatever we want to add. But Kim, there is a change for the new version of VanillaStack. To those who might know the older version, we now support the 10.0.0.0/ what is it, 16.12.8 IP address range. So there shouldn't be an issue on that. But why am I not allowed to advance now? What is missing? Well, we need to assign our workloads, right?
Yeah, at the moment we have just IP addresses of the master and the worker nodes, and now we need to assign our workload to our workers. So this means if we have larger cluster than 3 worker, we are able to separate workload from each other. We can say rook or storage should be placed on these nodes, OpenStack should place on those nodes.
So they do not
if we are
interfere
running
with each other, right?
Sure, if we are running Cloud Foundry, we can also pick up other nodes for this, and so we are also able to optimize nodes for our workloads.
Awesome. So I actually, while you were talking, I was basically advancing to the next page. What is going on here?
So we have the node check. So system needs to check, are the nodes available? Is the SSH key correct? Are the dependencies okay? So for example, there is a node assigned to rook. Okay, we are checking, is there more than one disk available?
Okay, cool. So,
and stuff like this. So, and then we need to set up some cluster specific stuff. So sitters for pods and services. This is Kubernetes relevant. We need a load balancer. We have the choice to use an external load balancer or run an internal load balancer. At the end, it's HA proxy and keep alive D. We need a cluster IP address for this, and then we need a domain for our cluster. And this domain should be point to our load balancer IP.
Awesome. So we did that. I press next.
So then, if we would like to run Let's Encrypt, we can do this. We can select the staging or a prod issuer in the next release. Maybe also in this release we will see. Comes the option to create an own CA or upload CA certificates to create TLS certificate with your own certificate authority. It's perfect for setups. They are not. They have no connection to the public internet.
Okay, cool. So I press next.
Yes. Then we see the rook settings. The rook settings, dashboard, yes, no. Monitoring, yes, no. We also, every time we need monitoring for this. And then we have the replica level. The replica level means how often data is replicated in the storage cluster.
Okay.
Default 3.
Okay.
And now OpenStack. So OpenStack, we need to set up our endpoint DNS. It's a subdomain of our cluster domain, and we pick up the release. At the moment, Steam Train, Usury, and Victoria is coming in the next weeks.
More like
DNS,
months, right? In regard to Victoria.
Sorry?
It's more like months, I guess, because everybody who's working with OpenStack knows that it might take a little.
Yeah, we can implement it, but it's not recommended to use it for production because it's launched this week. So maybe for production grade setups, wait a little bit, let the other guys find all the issues.
Absolutely.
It's bleeding edge is nice, but for production, bleeding edge is maybe a little bit too bleedy.
Yeah, totally get the point. Then we have some component-specific settings for MariaDB, RabbitMQ, and the Barbican key management service, right? You can always deselect at least not all of the options, but at least some of them, and customize your installation that way. Cinder for backup and block storage is basically just add if I say something stupid. So basically, it's there. You can basically not deselect Cinder at the moment. Glance is not deselectable as well for your images. Heat can be deselected. Again, we basically strip away most of the settings there, just for the pure and basic settings. You need to roll it out. Same is true for Horizon. The same is true for Keystone, as well as Mistral. With Neutron, it is a little bit different, right? Because with Neutron, you actually need to do some settings, right? Because when I tried to do things, you basically told me, Karsten, that is not going to work out that way if you do not change those settings. right?
Yeah. So you need the real interface names for tunneling and for the external network. This is important because these interfaces are mapped in the Open vSwitch, in the bridge TUN or bridge X. And if these interfaces are not the right, first Ansible will fail during the interface
Creation, yeah.
registration, and if Ansible will not fail, OpenStack will do it.
OpenStack will do it for you.
Yeah.
Nova, again?
Nova also, you can select the endpoints, can change the endpoints, virtualization type, KVM or QEMU. It's the question. What is your base environment? Is there a real KVM virtualization available, or do you using nested KVM or something like in virtual machines? Then maybe pick up QEMU for doing this. Same for host model, depending on is it a real KVM ready Linux system or is it a virtualization stuff?
Okay, totally get it. Totally get it. Okay, we did that. What now? What next?
You can add additional tools, for example, monitoring, logging, tracing, Harbor for secure imaging as your trusted harbor.
Nice pun.
Perfect.
I like that.
So selected, deselected.
Okay, and then press next.
Press next. You can then think about Polyverse. So in the next weeks there are more and more tools coming. So who don't know this Polyverse, you have the option if you pay for. Use the secure repositories for Polyverse, CentOS, Debian, and other Linux systems. Polyverse have a secure repository where all these images are rebuilt under secure environments and they are security scanned and all these stuff. If you would like to do this, enable this feature and insert your license key. If not, ignore it and press next. So then we have the subscription for Vanilla. Yes, VanillaStack is open source and there are no feature differences between the community stuff and the, let's call it
commercial.
Right now, not enterprise, commercial stuff. And this is if you are paying for the support at Cloudical, then you can use our update servers where all the required images are stored and scanned and patched maybe. And if you don't use it, then the installation is picking up images from public repositories like Harbor and Quay, how it's called, Docker Hub and Quay and Google.
So Kim, in short, the difference is basically the difference between a stable version and a rolling release, right?
Sure.
With the subscription, you have access to the stable version. Without subscription, you run basically in the edition that is considered to be a little bit more unstable, a little bit more rolling. Bleeding edge, as you might say. Okay, we did that. Now we can check the summary there. And then again, it's a dry run. It won't be finished in a few seconds. In nature, in real life, here with a dry run, it's basically now like running for 20 seconds, just to give you an impression. And then basically your installation is done. And while it is doing the dry run, Kim, we named that specific webinar 0 to 100 in like 35 minutes. But frankly, wasn't that a lie?
Yeah, we are on a good day with the perfect star constellation. We are able to run OpenStack in 27 minutes and a lot of seconds.
Interestingly enough, you are not visible anymore, but we will fix that in a few seconds as well. I can see you, so I will make you visible again. We can do that. I hope. Interestingly enough, I see you. Her. Oh, there we go. Then Kim, pardon me on that. That is you. You are you still there? Looks like the connection via Skype was lost. I'm going to recall Kim. Give me a second. He will be back in a few seconds. Here we go. Welcome back, Kim. Sorry for that. It's modern technologies. We are still there. Back to you. Again, I was basically touching on the aspect of like 35. There you are, and joined you again. Of like 27 minutes and some seconds. Kim, what does it take to achieve that time? Because frankly, when I tried VanillaStack my own, no, don't smile at me, please. When I tried it on my own, I was trying it on one of the supported environments. It was a public cloud environment, but it was basically just, I don't know, random VMs with like enough resources. Again, we'll touch on that in a few seconds, but frankly, it took me like 1.5 to 2 hours. So what is different on your environment? And is that something that needs to be reconsidered pretty much for every kind of environment? Is there a greater truth in that?
First, I'm testing these virtual machines because they are booting much faster than bare metal. So this is the first step you have. If you are running it on bare metal, you're not able to face these times, because if I'm thinking about these big HPE server or something like this, they need 10 minutes to boot.
And while doing that, while installing VanillaStack, basically, since it is Ansible, and since we need to install things on the machines, it needs to reboot, I guess, 2 or 3 times. Okay, so you would say you'd prefer virtual machines there?
Depending on the workload, not for OpenStack, because nested KVM is not the best idea. There I need the power of metal, and then I accept if the setup will done in 1 hour instead of 27 minutes. It's okay, because it's just a really good result. What do you need also? CPU memory in a good
amount, okay.
Good amount, and at the end a fast storage, because if you're running this on the slowest SATA disks ever, it will take I don't know how much time, because the CPU is just waiting for storage all the time.
Okay.
So we had this effect in our test lab. We had SATA storage, and we had in our KVM node an idle of 470 processes are waiting for the disk. So this is not going to work.
So you need to have a fast disk.
Yeah, fast disk, SSD or NVMe's.
You need to have basically enough RAM. What do you recommend? Basically, we need to make a difference, right, between workers and masters, because that is something on a Kubernetes level. Although with OpenStack you also have some sort of a master pane there, but on the Kubernetes level, the masters don't need that much of RAM, right? Because they are just for running the cluster per se, right? So it's like 4 or 8 gigabytes, preferably 8 gigabytes, and some 2 to 4 CPUs on the master side would be good. And frankly, from my perspective, please correct me if I'm wrong, but from my perspective, it would not make any difference if you, at least for the overall performance, if you would run the masters with HDDs instead of SSDs. It would just take a little longer to install, but that's basically it, right?
Yes. For if you have, it's a little bit depending how large is your cluster in regard of stored informations in your etcd database.
The etcd database.
is replicated on the master node. So if the storage is slow in the etcd database, then also your API requests are slow.
Good to know. Good to know. Although I feel like that might not be visible in the very beginning. It's more like if your cluster grows for like, I don't know, 10, 15 nodes, and you have you have a lot of workloads running there, right? But again, we actually do not want to focus on the masters, more on the workers. So the workers need to be real working horses, right? They need to have power, they need to have energy, they need to have storage. So what do you recommend for that?
So you're able to start OpenStack